Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. Regular board meeting, 6:33 p.m. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Looking for an approval of the agenda. I do have one item to add. I'll make the motion first.
So moved. Second.
Per a late attachment from Chelsea this afternoon, we are going to discuss substitute pay. That was a memo, that was a late attachment, so we'll do that one maybe just before other business.
Tim, could you say who first and seconded that? Have them identify themselves?
Glenn firsted it. And Mike Beck seconded.
Thank you.
And before we go any further, let's stand and say the pledge for those in person. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, is there any other discussion or additions to the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, looking for a motion to approve the minutes from July 20.
So moved. Peter Stone.
Second, Julie Finnegan.
Is there any discussion or corrections to the minutes? Please speak up. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from July 20 as presented, please say aye.
Minutes from July 20 as presented.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, public comment.
If you guys are talking, we can't hear anything.
I can hear just fine.
I can as well.
Is this any better, Rebecca?
Somebody type something in the chat.
All right, public comments. Looking here in person, I do not see anybody from the public outside of a school employee. So it looks like we do have some people from the public attending remotely. I will open the floor up now to public comments. A couple ground rules, however. First off, this is not a Q&A session. We are not going to be able to provide you on-demand answers to questions. This is a comment space. If you have specific questions, I invite you to email those to your building administrator or to Brooke. You can type them in the chat box. We'll do our best to capture those, but it is best to email those questions directly. And again, please identify yourself before making your public comment. So with that said, I'll open the floor up to any public comment remotely.
Crickets. Crickets.
Just give it another few seconds for any public comment. Okay, thank you. Moving on to correspondence. Brooke?
Nothing.
And now we'll talk about some policies that were brought up this week as directed from the Agency of Education, given the situation at hand and the ever-changing circumstances with the pandemic. The Agency of Education, as supported also by the School Boards Association, recommended each board adopt a policy granting the superintendent certain powers during the pandemic, and/or having the board craft individual policies to address certain things. So, Brooke, why don't you just give us the lay of the land on that?
So I believe all the board members received an email from the Vermont School Boards Association outlining 2 different possible policies. One is the delegation of authority during the state of emergency due to COVID-19, and the other one was modes of instruction during the state of emergency due to COVID-19. And in that policy, the board would have to come up with a bunch of separate policies or procedures based on the state of emergency. So we don't have a policy meeting until the 24th, so we thought we really need to have some direction on that much, sooner than the 24th of August. So out of those 2 policies, I would be recommending that you consider warning policy A25, which delegates the authority around school closure, building and grounds use, all of those things that really we've been handling at the central office level throughout the pandemic to the superintendent. Otherwise, when these things come up, we may in fact have to have a board meeting every time. So I don't know how folks feel about that, or if you had a chance to read, especially A25.
This is only until the state of emergency.
Correct, once the state of emergency is lifted. Also, it would include, I'd be providing you with regular reports as to what was happening, what was going on in the schools, what was going on in the district.
I think it brings up the slippery slope argument, but I'm not sure there really is a better option. So I guess I would say I'm for it.
Which one?
Well, just delegating that authority to the superintendent, yes.
Policy A25.
Well, if someone wants to make a motion, we can
I
continue
move-
this discussion.
I move that we adopt policy A25, which is delegation of authority during state of emergency due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Tim?
It would need to be warned.
Yes,
Tim?
warning.
Yes,
This is Tony.
yes.
I
Brooke.
will second that warning.
Okay. Okay, so again, there's a motion by Patty Beaumont and a second by Tony Lobdell. We are not approving the policy tonight, we're just making a motion to warn it. It'll be the next board meeting 2 weeks from now where we'll officially adopt that policy. So the floor is now open to continue any discussion or concerns people might have. John?
So this policy, will it automatically expire at the end of this school year?
At the end of the state of emergency. So whenever the governor declares the state of emergency is over, then it will, yes, no longer exist.
And my second question on this then is, with the planning that has gone into how we're approaching this school year, what triggers us closing our schools?
So it would be positive cases from the Department of Health, positive COVID cases in our schools, and so that would be something that would be done in consultation with the Department of Health, and listening to their guidance on whether or not schools should be closed. Certainly if we were in that situation, I would be talking to all of you anyway.
Right. But then in the discussions also, would we close every school, or are there provisions that we would close, say, school A
Correct.
or school B?
It would be school by school, it wouldn't necessarily be the whole district.
Angie?
Have we set down how many cases?
No, the Department of Health has not given us that guidance yet, but we're expecting new health guidance this
So
week. We've been expecting it for
we as a
several.
board wouldn't set that, we would rely on the Department of Health.
we
I would
don't
want to
set the
rely on
timers.
the experts in that case. I mean, the health experts. To make that call.
Josh, I ask you a question, Mr. Local Control, and not knowing the extent or the duration of the state of emergency, which I think certainly will go on through at least the remainder of this school year. Do you have any concerns about?
Well, I think it brings up the slippery slope argument, without a doubt, and that's certainly nothing directed at you, Brooke, in any way, shape, or form, but I think anybody with any antennas up recognizes that. However, as redundant as it is, this is unprecedented. It just seems so cumbersome without that it's potentially creating a larger mess and a public relations nightmare. So if decisions are made directly in response to both the public health officials, I think that's the best we can do. And then kind of a more organic trust in Brooke, that Brooke would flag something. This is something I really do need to communicate, and we trust her to do that if it was a real hot button issue.
And I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to completely read the whole thing. Is it only in regards to this particular state of emergency, or is it any state of emergency?
This state of emergency.
This particular state of emergency.
The warning states COVID-19's
Okay.
within it.
Hopefully this is the only state of emergency.
Well, you
You never know.
You never know.
I don't know.
You don't want to have it on the books and 3 years later, there's some other state
Right,
of emergency and
no.
we have another situation.
So Angie, it's actually titled during the state of emergency due to COVID-19 pandemic. So
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yep, just wanted to clarify for you.
And Brooke, we spoke earlier, but that's your preference, correct?
Correct.
Anybody else have any questions or commentary? Okay, hearing none, no one online? Tony, Rebecca,
I think Tanya's on.
Tanya as well? Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the motion to warn policy 825, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. Okay, we have a couple open seats on the Hubbardton board.
Rules of instruction.
So it's like a policy.
No, if you chose this one.
Then you don't have to do
Correct.
it.
Correct.
Excellent, thank you.
So again, as we're aware, there's a couple of vacancies on the Hubbardton School Board, and over the past few weeks, someone stepped forward expressing their interest. Person here tonight, Christine Puyo. She had submitted a letter to Brooke. So again, this is the responsibility of the board to appoint that school director, if you so choose, for the remainder of this year through March, and then if you wanted to continue, you would have to go through the process of getting your name out on a petition and being elected in by Hubbardton residents next March. So if you wouldn't mind, Christine, if you would just introduce yourself and say a few pieces,
Okay.
why you're interested, etc.
All right, my name is Christine Pouliot, as was just explained. I moved here recently last November from Attleboro, Massachusetts. I've had property here in Hubbardton for 12 years, and we just decided that we were going to retire here. I've been a nurse for 45 years. I have 2 grown children, 4 grandchildren. I'm interested in education. I recently graduated from the University of Texas in 2013. And I'm interested because I'm looking for something to do. I'm civic-minded. I want to be involved in the community. So that's what led me to this. I went online and read a lot of your minutes of your meetings to find out how the district was run. And that's it.
So I entertain a motion to appoint Christine, and then we can talk about it further.
So moved. Mike?
Second, Julie.
Is there any discussion? Does anyone have any questions for Christine? I will say you can't participate as a board member tonight, you'd have to take an oath, et cetera, but
Yeah.
you could be in good shape for our next meeting 2 weeks from now. Becky here is a new member as well, she was appointed at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago. Okay, so. All right, hearing no other questions, any questions online, Tony, Tanya, or Rebecca? Okay, hearing none then, all those in favor of appointing Christine to be the second board representative from Hubbardton to serve a term spanning just the remainder of this year through March. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
They can only hear the cricket.
Yeah, Tony can hear us. Tony, are we good?
You're good. When people are speaking that are not near you or near Brooke, we do hear the cricket more than we can hear them. That cricket is quite loud.
All right. Where's your microphone?
Try to turn it down.
Well, it is a loud cricket, so props to the cricket.
Welcome, Christine.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
He's over on that side, so you guys should just search him out. And
He's-
set him outside.
This is like year number 2 or 3.
Yeah,
I mean, this guy
been
was
ongoing
here.
disease with
Yeah.
crickets.
Yes, he keeps us above. What? Oh.
Cannot be the same cricket.
It's definitely the same, or a relative.
It's the same cricket. There are kids in here pre-COVID, there's no way that cricket would sit
It's
down.
a relative. It's good, good luck.
Go outside, and come back and call.
Yeah. It's all good.
something to do.
Just speak. Oh.
It's outside, Rick.
You're a cricket man, are you?
It's outside.
Cricket whisperer.
All right, so we're going to move forward now to the master agreement with the Teachers Association, and the chairwoman of the negotiating committee, Patty Beaumont, will kind of give a summary of things. Patty?
Hi, can you hear me out there? Yes, from anyone?
Yes, very well, Pat.
Great,
Yes.
thank you. So I'm very happy to announce that we've been able to reach a mutual agreement after having met since September of 2019 many times with the Slate Valley Educational Association. And thanks to Chief Negotiator Archie Clark and his team, who really worked hard to help us to come to this agreement. And I also want to just acknowledge all the members of the Slate Valley USD who worked just as hard. Julie, Tony, Glenn, John, Tim, Rick, Becca, Mike, and Dave Carpenter, who was on last year as an Orwell representative. And I want to also thank our incredible administrative team because they did a wonderful job. Brooke and everyone, Cheryl, for helping support us in all of our efforts to get an agreement. So, with that said, just going over a couple of highlights. The agreement is for 2 years, so it will go through 2022. And the salary has been negotiated for the first year with 2.25% new money, and we're open for negotiations for that salary for the following year. Health insurance will remain status quo through January 1st of 2021, and that is because of the state of Vermont, when it will be negotiated statewide at that point in time. We have decreased the number of days from 188 to 186, and the 186 constitutes 180 student contact days and 6 in-service days. We also have a few things like after-school meeting language, some prep time, and some grievance language that we worked on to our mutual benefits. So anyway, thank you to everybody for that. I think that's about it. Anybody have any questions? As you can tell, my mask does not well, does anybody's?
You can make a motion while you're there.
Oh, I no. Yeah, I guess I can. So, I move that we approve the contract as stated between the Slate Valley Unified Union School District and the Slate Valley Educational Association for this 2-year contract.
Second, Julie.
All right, motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions that the board members have about the master agreement?
We know what the forecast is for that 2.5% increase in salary with given teachers that we have now, given the fact that we don't have an approved budget.
So it's 2.25.
It's
It's 2.25%,
2.25%,
and it's new money. It's not an actual direct correlation to a 2.25% increase in their salary. So it's the new monies that need to come in to the district to provide the raises, which are a little bit different.
Cheryl may be able to
Yes,
provide the exact number.
I couldn't hear the question.
How much does the 2.25% new money represent in the budget?
Well, it represents based on the teachers that were in the district in September.
Right.
$192,242.
Okay, thank you.
Is it 2.5 or 2.25?
It should be 2.25. I sent out an updated memo.
I didn't.
Okay.
Fine.
Are there any other questions or discussion about the master agreement? Okay, hearing none. Bonnie Linehan had a question in the chat there. She could not hear Cheryl's response. That response was 2.25% new money equates to $192,242. $192,242, $192,000 in total dollars. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the master agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
And anybody opposed? All right. Again, thank you very much to the Teachers Association, their negotiators, and everyone on the board who spent a lot of time with those meetings and some of those difficult discussions. Thank you. Okay, there was an attachment about a couple hires and a couple resignations. If someone wants to just make a motion. Peter Stone?
School year letter of intent for Wendy Thorne, special education for $64,210. And what's voiding?
We want to avoid,
Stephen.
yeah, some of
Stephen VIRTUALY.
Digos,
Special education, special educator for $53,391. You want to do the retirements or that first?
I would do that first, then do the retirement stuff, right? Second, Julie.
Any questions?
Okay, no questions or discussion about the one hire and the one rescinding of the contract? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And anybody opposed?
We have school year retirement resignations. Sean, what's that? Sean Ketchum, science, retiring 6/30/21. And Miller, Merrill Stenton,
Yeah.
music, resigning 6/30/20.
And I would say, just to correct Sean, that should be retiring effective now, so it should be 20.
Sean
21.
retiring now.
Looking for a second to that?
Glenn, second.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions regarding these two resignations?
So I do, I
Go ahead.
guess. So science, you'll be replacing them,
Mhm.
and the same with music?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Angie,
Did
go
the
ahead.
other one take the buyout? Was it just one buyout?
One did.
Sean did, yes.
But the other one didn't,
No.
wasn't eligible or didn't take the
Right.
He resigned. He didn't retire.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the two resignations, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, thank you. Number 10, Brooke, I'll let you and any of your staff talk about an opening or an update on the reopening of schools.
So, we've all, the leadership team has definitely been working hard over the last several weeks, planning for the reopening of schools. We're supposed to get updated health guidance. We've been being told that, well, we were expecting it before August 1st. And so now it's August 10th and we still don't have it. So hopefully we will have that this week. But we have some idea of what we're expecting to see in that. For example, we're being told that the guidelines for social distancing for pre-K through 5 will change to 3 to 6 feet, although we haven't seen that in writing. So until we see it in writing, we're going to go with the 6 feet. And that there'll be some more guidelines in terms of facial coverings and what's acceptable and what's not. So also I believe the screening questions will be broadened. So we're waiting to get those final questions because we are actually working to print up cards for families so families can do the actual screening questions at home, and then we're just taking the temperature when they arrive at the building. But until we know the final questions, we haven't moved ahead with that. You know, I'm sure the principals can also share what's happening in their buildings. We have teachers back today. Teachers have 2 floating in-service days, so some of them started coming in today, really working on cleaning out the classrooms, you know, rearranging furniture, making sure that we're all ready to go from that point of view. We've been working with Chris Cole. We just got the ventilation report from the engineer on Friday, so we'll be bringing that to building and grounds. We seem to be good to go in terms of ventilation in all of the buildings, well within the parameters. So that's really good news. I think that's an advantage of having some inefficient systems that we actually do have ventilation happening. So that's definitely good. The isolation rooms are almost, well, yeah, they're halfway done. Where the goal is to have all of those isolation rooms for the nurses' offices done on the first day of school. So I think it'll be tight, especially with the ventilation systems that need to go into those isolation rooms. But definitely working hard to get that done. What else? Working with families on, certainly there is a remote learning option if families have a medical exemption. So working with different families on that and seeing how that plays out and putting plans together for that with families if they're qualifying for a medical exemption. But all in all, I mean, I think we're ready to go. We're working on getting some long-term subs in the buildings for the month of September. So if we need a substitute, there's somebody that's assigned to that building, so we don't have substitutes going between buildings. So really trying to think about all the little pieces. And so we're also hoping to have this published by Friday, but a complete, you know, version 1 of our reopening plan. You know, we've had bits and pieces you know, we have a lot of documents in different places, so collating them all into one document and publishing that later this week, so.
How about transportation? How's that?
Yep, so we have less families indicating that they're going to use busing, which is great. So we feel like we're well underway to make that happen. Now, the social distancing on the bus won't be 6 feet, which we've said right along. I mean, we're going to be opening under phase 3 guidelines, but we're planning on putting the bus monitors on the bus. We've been able to get the supplies. Every kid's going to have a card to get on the bus with, or a booklet. We haven't decided yet with the screening questions answered, and they will just get their temperatures taken when they get on the bus and have assigned seats and have to wear masks, but we feel like we're in pretty good shape so far. Great for that. Thank you.
We're opening in phase 2.
We're opening in phase 2, but busing is phase 3. Because phase 2 busing is impossible to pull off. You would either need to double your transportation, and we're allowed to under the state guidelines to do busing under phase 3.
And Betcha is on board, and they're
Yep.
going to be complying by the
Correct.
guidance that we put forth to them?
Yep, we've been working very closely with them. We've been working very closely with the Abbey group around food service. Everyone's been great, really great.
So I know we don't have, well, we have a remote option for people who have medical, and you're working with that. But we are, so I watched the majority of the video where Dan French was talking, giving his address or his update to the Senate. It was via Zoom, they put it on YouTube, it got sent to us by somebody, so I watched, I was kind of listening while I was doing other stuff. And one thing that the state mentioned was the VTVLC connection that they have initiated. Now VTVLC traditionally was just high school, 8th grade and high school, like some algebra in high school courses. They've expanded it to be middle school.
Yep.
And it's an online school. It is not
Correct.
remote learning, correct?
Correct.
And the only way for anybody in our district to take advantage of that would be to pay out of their pocket. Like, it's not something that
Well,
we approve in our school, per se.
well, you could, but it comes at a huge cost to the school district. Also,
Right, that's what I'm saying. We would have to accept that as an alternative to pay
Correct.
for it.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Isn't
So-
that an option where we could have a teacher who also teaches a course for them,
Correct.
and then our tuition is
Correct.
free for our students?
Correct, but Casey's looked into it, not to put you on the spot, but it still could be potentially hugely costly to the district. I mean, we've estimated, depending on how many kids would take advantage of it, it could cost us almost $500,000.
Because it's not just one class, it would be all core classes.
The other thing, in order to do it, is you would have to reassign a teacher, K through 12, that we already have in the district, to be an online teacher, which would disrupt the class placements of all of the kids we've already done as well, so.
So even though we've used VTVLC in the past for algebra,
Yep, we still
or,
are.
you know, we have, this is a whole different ballgame. This is not the same thing as taking a class that we offer to our school. This is like online school, basically.
So when you devote a school employee, you get between 15 and 25 slots, and those slots are open in the certificate area of that teacher for secondary school.
Oh, okay.
And for K through 8, it's a little bit more flexible, but based on that number of slots, you're devoting an $80,000 employee. So the best savings rate is to pay the $600 per credit course for a number of students who would be interested. And that's where, if you say, I did the math this morning, if you had 100 students participate, 50 of them were K-8s, 50 of them were 9-12s, you'd be around $420,000, as opposed to devoting the number of faculty members that you would have to. They have to commit for an entire school year, because VTVLC uses them to teach other students at other schools. And whereas we could have students who started in that realm and then decided to leave. And so you really kind of, I think that's a riskier move. Either way, you're committing to a dollar amount that I just don't think that you would want to commit to.
I just wanted to put it out there because, you know, he made it sound in his address that it's this, the state's done it for free. That's how he, like, and I'm thinking to myself, it is not free, like, don't, you know what I mean?
So if you devote a school employee, you would say that person is under contract anyway. So he, perhaps in his mind, would say there's not a cost above and beyond who you currently have under contract.
Gotcha.
If you were able to negotiate the school or the student's schedule to be able to fit with whomever it is you dedicate to hold those slots
Gotcha.
across your school district. There's a little bit more flexibility K-8, and I think that's probably because this is the first time that they've done that. So they've built programming, which includes specials.
They got it from Florida.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. It's 5 hours online, so it's the equivalent of a school day. And so regardless of what might be a remote access option, there's a lot of management required for someone K through 5. And so I would still see that even if you were to offer those opportunities, there would need to be a great amount of support in the house in order to allow that to function adequately.
Right.
And so again, you're devoting an amount of money that in turn, once a parent experienced that, might decide that that's not the right fit for them, whereas that teacher is employed for the entire school year through BTVLC.
Gotcha. Okay.
So certainly, they've never done this before.
Right.
It is something that I would say is an interesting concept, but I wouldn't see right now that that is the best fit at this moment.
No, that sounds good. I just wanted to clarify because he made it sound
Sure.
so grand and free in his video that I was like, if anybody saw that, parents saw that, they'd be like, whoa, that's my remote option.
Yeah, and
Right.
we have a good relationship. I mean, going through calling some of the board members here in regards to Algebra 1 and stuff, and so I've been in close contact with them probably for the past month and a half, trying to figure out what their options are.
Okay.
I think there are some free trainings. Actually, I know there are.
Oh, free training.
Professional
But it doesn't mean that you're to conform to the actual programmatic offerings.
Yeah, because what I kind of heard about it was that if your school approves it, it's free to you as a student. That's kind of how it was kind of portrayed. But what their understanding is no, it's maybe free to you per se, but the cost involved to your school district is way more than the cost involved in coming to school, basically.
So I have a bunch of questions, and the first one is a statement for regards to algebra classes that I found out today. For those of the people that are homeschooling, deciding to homeschool, those kids are not eligible to take the algebra class, even if they were
Recognized as
being able to
qualified
take it. So that was a disappointment because we had different information in regards to that beforehand. Which is unfortunate. I'm curious as to what numbers we've had now as to what percent or what numbers of people are saying that they're going to homeschool now still. Is it still a large number? Is it?
Still hovering around 5%, but each day we seem to be getting more families calling back and saying they aren't coming to school.
Have we really talked to, I guess my main concern is that I still feel like we're not listening to families and listening to the community members and really finding out what the concerns are, that we're just going forward with this plan and not really listening. And it may be a minority of the people, but again, we're not listening to those people and what their concerns are. And if it costs us one extra position for that person to be able to take attendance and answer questions on those days, isn't it worth it to the board to keep those kids in our school system, even have them in our classes some of those days and not alienate them to be homeschooled? And to me, I think it's really a big deal. I know Brooke and I have had conversations back and forth, and I've talked to Deb back and forth, and I guess I can't let it go yet. I'm still personally really struggling whether or not to homeschool my kids or not. I know other people on the board are struggling with this. I don't know how you all feel, but I really think it's, even 5% of our parents are thinking about it for different reasons, but if we could give options, I really think it's important. Like a lot of my questions are, okay, so which classrooms are not fitting that 6 foot, even if it's 3 to 6 foot rule now, if those guidances are changing? That's something as a parent I want to know before I send my kids to school. I want to know, how many cases will cause the school to shut down. These are all things that I really want to know. Like, I think it would be helpful to post pictures of the classrooms before school starts, so people could have an idea of what it looks like. What qualifies as a medical condition? Like, is it a medical condition of the child, or is it a medical condition of someone in the family? What qualifies as, there's just so many different things that I just feel like we're not really, like, the reason I'm here in person tonight is because I feel so strongly about this. I'm willing to come in person to kind of advocate for it. I just really think, I'm just really hoping all of you will just sort of think about it and think about what listening to those people in the community can really do to help bridge the gap that we're feeling like connecting to the rest of the people. Does that make sense? I don't know if it's the people that I communicate to, but I've heard a lot of people say, I don't feel comfortable. I have to do it for this reason, or I don't really have an option to do all the time, but maybe sometimes I could keep my kids home some days. But that's not an option here. And it just feels like we're not really listening. So, what other are some of my questions? I don't know. Is it possible for us to test all of our staff before we go back? I mean, you look at the places where day 1 and day 2, they have cases of COVID. And, some of it is large cities, but some of it is small towns too that have already opened. So, I don't know. Those are just my questions.
So, if I can jump in, can you guys hear me? Okay? Yep. Okay, great. Yeah, so I share a lot of Angela's concerns. I know I've talked to some of you about it, but I'm also was hoping for any bit of flexibility as far as remote. Now I've spent a lot of time looking at VLC and sorry, Tanya. Planning. I'm now planning on home study, most definitely, and did have some good conversations with VLC about what they're developing, and I talked to Casey about this too, but I got the feeling it's a work in progress. There's a lot more interest in remote learning this year than ever before, as we all know, and that price that you put out there, I think that might come down a lot if there is enough interest statewide, because they're building a much bigger statewide pool. So I just recommend, and I'm certainly willing to help, that we stay in really close touch with them and make sure if it's really that cost prohibitive, that's one thing, but if it comes down significantly in the next couple of weeks, I feel like it's really important that we stay in the loop on that. So, and I've also, along the same lines, had conversations with others in the community, as I know you have, Brooke, and others have, who feel like the decision is too stark. We want to support the schools. We've had a really good experience with the schools since moving here, and want to continue to be part of it, but it feels like 5 days a week, full time, at this stage is too much. So, I don't feel like I could choose that for my family, but I also feel like I want to stay on team school, and not yank our funds, so I've been grappling with it as well. But, in the end, we have to sort of like make decisions that are right for our families.
And I think, are we the only one in Vermont going to the 5 days?
No, there's a couple more, I think, up north, my understanding.
It just seems like everyone around us is doing either the 4 and 1 or not going back at all.
Well, I know, I mean, not.
And which is not what I'm suggesting. I'm just suggesting giving the option for parents who don't want to go back to the 5 days to allow an option for them to only set 3 days if they want.
No, I'm just saying Rutland City Public Schools is not doing either of the two that you just suggested, so I just work there, so that's why I know it's
Okay.
not.
What are they doing?
They're doing basically K through 6 is definitely either in person all day or you can have a remote option. 7th grade and 8th grade are similar to that, and then 9th grade is a red, white day app for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Freshmen are going all day. But there is an opt-out for remote learning.
So that's, I guess, what I'm just asking for is that option.
So is there a number of potential homeschoolers dropped way below that 80? Which was the number we had a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm hearing from principals every day that parents are calling back and saying, no, they've decided to send their child in person, but
So,
I'm not gonna know a hard and fast number probably for the first day of school because, right.
yeah, I understand that. But, you know, one of the questions that I've had a number of families ask me, if we can provide a remote option for, you know, a medical exemption, you know, why can't we do that for other families? I don't have a good answer for that.
I think the pure volume, and I think if you're going to put teachers in a situation where they're teaching remotely and in person at the same time, I don't think you can do 5 days a week then in person. You would have to go to 4 days a week and probably 1 day where everyone's remote so that the teachers had adequate planning time. I think that is a heavy, heavy lift, and I think you're going to be watering down the curriculum for everyone across the board, and you're not going to be able to do that.
Can I ask you a question? I thought you were going to ask all teachers to put all of their lessons in Google
Right.
Classroom ahead of time anyway.
Correct.
So
But that's the assessments and that's not the direct instruction.
So then, the piece that would be missing is the
Teacher interacting with the students.
correct, but then it would be on basically the parents at that point, right? To do, I mean, they'd have to log in each day for attendance, you said.
Right.
And then what would be the difference from that than what happened in the spring, the direct instruction?
Well, I don't think anything we did the best we possibly could in the spring, but I don't think that
was
should be
ideal.
a standard that
Right.
we should be, I think we can do better than that. We have some kids that even if they chose remote learning, they don't have families at home to support them. I think that's just going to create a greater inequity across the district.
I would also add that in-person teaching is not going to be what in-person teaching was prior to COVID. So as Brooke talks about it being a heavy lift, and I visited with Josh before we came in, teaching in a 6-foot distance classroom is not anything that's normal. And so there's a great amount of attention that is already being paid to how it is teachers are able to prepare themselves and think differently about creating experiences for students in a classroom. And that's been the majority of our focus in planning. I've been unbelievably impressed with the amount of contact teachers have had during this time. And it's really focused on how is it that they can plan for something that they've never experienced, but they're more willing to and feeling more confident about their abilities in because it's closer to something that they've done before.
Casey, they can't hear you online. Can you come up here?
Are you logged into the meeting right there on your computer?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm trying to help Bonnie with some notes.
Okay.
I was just saying that the in-person teaching that teachers are preparing themselves for is not at all what they had experienced prior to COVID. And so the focus on that as an instructional manner in which to go and deliver assessments and content is something that is in and of itself a big task. And although that it's similar to how people have student taught and how people have thought about interacting with students when they became educators, it does take an unbelievably different mindset in terms of how you create experiences that aren't just completely plugged into computers in an in-person setting, and trying to then kind of leverage the fact that you're in a similar space together and how to look at that in a socially distanced way in order to make that something different than simply being plugged into being plugged into a computer. And so that in and of itself, being the focus at this point, adding something where you would create robust remote learning experiences, which is what companies like VTVLC and others are promoting at this point, it is not possible. You might, as you said, Angie, have documents that are uploaded and you have access to those. But the way that we're thinking about this remote access for those medical exemptions is going to be through synchronous planning, where there's a heavy amount of responsibility on the parent in order to get that student into what is in-person, in-classroom instruction. That in and of itself has been something that's taken an enormous amount of conversation. It is not comfortable for a teacher to have a camera pointed at them in a classroom. So working on these elements that are just improving our in-person instruction for the, as Brooke said, the smaller numbers of students that we're expecting are going to have these medical exemptions is something that right now, because teachers aren't required to speak to me, they're unbelievably giving of their time, and we're able to make this seem possible, and so they're excited about returning to the classroom. And I know that does present challenges for families. I know personally, where I live, up in Weybridge, I do not have the option to have 5 days a week. That's what my wife and I both need, because we both work in Rutland County. And so I do feel for every parent that's out there, my work in this school district is around the best way to provide experiences for students so they can better engage in their learning, and this is what I think the best model is at this time.
But isn't it better to have those kids here 2 or 3 days a week than none?
If you're willing to shift the models of which you have scheduling that's already in place, then we could talk about how that might be a good fit if you're considering something that's remote. I'm saying the best option is to not consider remote at all.
But for those families like me who are considering, so my only option is homeschool or 5 days a week, what would you prefer, me to homeschool?
And I'm saying that's the position that I'm in as a parent as well.
But I'm saying, as an administrator, would you prefer me to homeschool? Or, okay, so my option right now is to not send them to school and homeschool, or would you prefer as an administrator to give me an option and have them only be there a couple days a week?
I would prefer in-person every day, and then...
But if I'm not going to allow that to be an option.
Question, if you want me to, yeah, I prefer that the family has to make the decision that's the best fit for the family.
Angie, if you're so worried about, numbers of kids in the classroom with your kids, there is the option also of changing schools within the district.
I know, but it's a new cohort of kids. My kids are, I don't want to talk about my specific situation anyways, but I'm trying to be an advocate for some of those other people who are in my situation as well, that have similar concerns. And, if everyone moves to Benson, then those numbers go up as well.
So I do have a question kind of on the coattail, a little bit different in the train of thought, but I do worry about the increase in absences from children based on the fact that we've screened them. So everybody knows a kid can seem perfectly fine and you didn't put your hands on them, and you find out later that they've thrown up at school and they're home. And I get that we're going to spend a little more time walking through those questions with children and doing that, especially with younger kids. What is the approach and model to address some of that increase? Because, I think employers have seen it already that have been out there with employees that you've had to turn folks out the door very cautiously and very broad spectrum. So how do we deal with that scenario? Because it will be an increase, presumably. I mean, I think the mask will help even with the flu, but let's be real, once they take their mask off and have to eat lunch, they're still eating lunch, they're still gonna touch surfaces, they're still using the bathroom. So do we have some plans in place to try to figure out if this kid, for whatever reason, my one child seems to pick up a bug everywhere he goes, if that kid keeps missing, how do we keep them on par with the rest of their cohort group?
I would think it'd be pretty similar when students are sick. So I don't think the sickness is going to necessarily drive all the shifts that take place. I mean, if there's a large cohort in a class, that's very different than if there's students that are sick and it's 3 or 4 here, or 5 or 4 someplace else. I think that's what we're saying about backing things up, and the teacher will do the best they can to catch up when their day ends with those students that haven't been able to attend.
So like the kids that are out that get sent, because a lot of our employees, the doctor's first thing is go get them tested, and then we're still seeing a delay of at least 5 days before we see that employee return. Those are the kids that I think presumably that could be several absences that happen like that, because the testing is retrospective, not predictive.
And I think that'll be a responsibility. It'll be on the
It's just a
teacher.
question for
No.
everybody to keep out there and really think
absolutely.
about hard, because it's been a huge
Sure.
challenge in private industry trying to deal with those absences and come up with a plan. I get that it would be 20 times worse with a student.
Right, and I think we're gonna have those challenges with our staff as well.
And are we gonna change our policy as you know, for sicknesses, you have to have a fever? Are we gonna accept the parents, you know, oh, my child has a fever today? Or do we have to bring them to school to get checked for a fever and then take them home?
We're waiting to get some more direction in terms of truancy and attendance guidance from the state. So then we'll be looking at our procedures and changing that. It will be more lenient than it has been in years past.
Peter?
Well, I'm not sure, personally, I think 5 days a week is what the kids need to go. Every kid, I talk to a lot of kids, and they're all ready to go back to school. Even the ones that normally don't want to go to school, they're ready. They're tired of being home, they've been home since March. 5 days versus 3 days, I'm not sure that because you're out of school 2 days a week, it's gonna make that much of a difference. You're still gonna go back.
You don't know my family situation, so this is, it's,
Can I finish?
sure, I'm just trying to tell you.
So, I'm just saying, 5 days or 3 days a week, I don't think the kids are gonna be any more or less sick. I've talked to a couple parents that, one parent especially, that they're gonna homeschool their kid because there's not an option. I have that's basically the only person in Orwell, 1 or 2 people that decided to homeschool their kids. The rest that I know of, and I don't know all of them, are choosing to send them. I think the majority of people want their kid to go back to school.
And I would just say that one of the reasons why you're reducing the numbers, or why you're choosing what you're choosing, doesn't have anything to do with anything but reducing the numbers, so that you can physically put people in a room. So, like in the building I'm in, it's a very old building, it's really hard to get 6 feet, right? So you sit there with your cardboard, template, if you will, and you put down your 6 by 6 templates so that you can figure out how many desks to put in there. So it's not about going every other day because of an illness. It's about going every other day because now I can fit half of the kids in my building one day and half in the other day.
I understand that, but I also have to say there's other circumstances in which particular families, that may be a better option.
Josh?
I want to commend you. That took a lot of bravery. Some other folks, it's a super difficult conversation. And I have a lot of thoughts. I don't want to be on my soapbox too long. I do think that you continually have mentioned your situation, and that's fair. It's totally legit. I've got my own situation, and that's something that, the public school cannot really adhere to everybody's situation. And
I agree.
I know how emotional it is, and this being a democratic process, I think it's honorable that you brought this up. And there are a lot of people. I don't trust data until I actually see the numbers with my own eyes, ever. I've learned that in life. And I actually have a different concern. I voted for and am a strong proponent of 5 days a week in-person education. However, my fear is what happens when that control is taken out of our hands. I had a situation at home this spring that was absolutely horrific. My kids didn't learn a thing, and it has nothing to do with where they went to school. I was teaching online myself, dumping everything that I had in, and I failed utterly. I've never worked so hard at failing in my whole life. My kids needed me in ways anyway, we'll just stop there. But my concern is, again, I don't want to be in the soapbox, but I have an extensive background in high-end mountaineering. It's about as risky as you can do. In Alaska, in the Tetons, and northern British Columbia. And that's kind of where we are right now. We have this formula, and risk is around you all the time. And I'm not going to break it down to you, but it's kind of a bullseye. The bullseye is we're summiting that mountain. That's what we want to do. That's what we're here to do. That's what people are paying me to do, to get them to that point. However, we're constantly gathering these red flags. And as soon as that cost does not equal the reward, we have to pull the plug. And sometimes that plug's pulled without us. Sometimes I get a call on my sat phone that says, Josh, no, you're not going. Bring him down now. And I am afraid about what that looks like, because I am afraid of a repeat process of the spring, which is, again, no daggers thrown at anybody. And heavy lift, that's a poignant word, phrase at this point. It's an incredibly heavy lift. I am an educator myself. The idea of that duality of online, in person, it is impossible. You just can't do it. How do we plan for one thing, but also recognize that if we put all our eggs in one basket, if we're strictly goal-oriented, we could really be caught in a serious pickle. I'm not going to go too far into this next round, but I think that public education itself is in a very dangerous place within this. And if we're all paying attention, again, those antennas are up, we recognize this could really change the structure of our demographic, as well as how we're teaching, and certainly affect equity. I am very encouraged to hear about teachers that are thinking of breaking the mold or breaking out, and I encourage the district to put efforts in that. Even if they are not tangibly used in the next coming months, they will only be for the benefit in the future. And I would also encourage, I don't know how to do this, but I would also encourage reaching out to families about what that might look like if we are forced to go into another shutdown, or what creative ideas this district is making in-house to make that classroom feel more normal, outdoor spaces, et cetera, et cetera. I guess I'll stop there because I know everybody wants to go home. I could go on forever, but I think that's super, super important. And I also really want to urge everybody here to not alienate people, not put a scarlet letter on folks that decide to homeschool. This is a personal decision. Everybody has different experiences, different abilities within their home. This is not ideal for anyone. So, with that, I'll end.
I agree with Josh. I can't imagine trying to teach my son at home again. He needs school, he needs the structure. All of my boys need the structure of school. And I don't look down on anybody who would like to homeschool or thinks that's the better way to go, but for me personally, I'm looking forward to school opening back up because my kids need to be there.
John?
To take this in a different direction. So if we have 5% of our folks homeschool, what does that do to our equalized pupil numbers for next year, and what is the implication for our budget?
Not a different direction. That was what I was talking about.
Cheryl just stepped out, but that's a two-year average.
Mhm.
So also the legislature is possibly considering legislation to hold districts harmless in terms of homeschooling during the pandemic. So if that's the case, then it wouldn't impact us at all. If it's not the case, it would impact us some, and again, Cheryl stepped out, so I can't give you an exact number, But it would impact us definitely in FY22, and it would really impact us in FY23.
And unless those kids never came back, right?
Well, right, I don't know.
The few people I talk to about homeschooling, it's just for the year. They're not doing it because they are abandoning the school, or they're just doing it because personally, they think they need to do it.
Is homeschooling like you have to commit for a certain amount of time? Or
No.
if you choose to
No.
homeschool and then 3
No.
months in, things are
Yep.
looking great, they can come back into the
Correct.
school system?
Correct.
It's a win-win.
I know we have a few administrators here tonight, Chris and Deb. Anybody, Amy, anybody have anything they want to speak to specifically about their point of view or their schools? I see Patrick's online too.
Tim, let's see if I can put my microphone on.
Yes, you're gonna get feedback.
I am?
He's gonna
Yep,
have to
It's because I'm plugged into this
Okay.
amplifier.
I'll
so
talk
people-
loud. Can you hear me?
You can't.
I'm gonna
Then
have
I have
to
to go, come on.
It's fun, don't worry.
It's fun, yeah. I just love it.
It's not any hotter up there than it is. Don't worry about it.
You don't breathe any better up here?
No,
Oh.
yeah, well, that's true.
I just want to share that at Fairhaven Grade School, last week, we had a trial run of bringing kids back into school for humanities camp. We had, I believe it was 13 or 14 students who participated in a camp every day. And on Monday, the first day, the instructors asked kids, how are you feeling about this? Where's your anxiety level? And the kids shared, on a scale of 1 to 10, they all reported a 1 or a 2. They were feeling anxious about wearing a mask. They were feeling anxious about how am I going to stay 6 feet away from my friends? And the adults were also a 1 and 2. They worked all week. They worked in our gym. They worked outside. They did so many activities. The teachers were so mindful about planning how do we do collaborative work 6 feet away. The kids had a blast. The survey at the end of the week, everybody was at a 7 to 9. There's still a little bit of anxiety, as we all have, but the kids were so happy to be back in school. And that is what's important. This week we have a camp number 2. Our GAP camp is happening this week. So I'm anxious to see the results of a completely different cohort of kids. I think we're ready. We need to be back in school. Our teachers, I've never seen teachers work so hard this summer during their vacation on their time. They're always calling, communicating. Teams are having Google Meets every week this summer, collaborating together to do the best that we possibly can do to make sure we can keep kids as safe as we possibly can. Safety is huge. As a building administrator, we talk about it all the time. Pre-COVID, safety is the one thing that keeps us all awake. And I've been using this analogy with people. It's like you have a scale on your shoulders. You've got COVID on one side and the risk of somebody getting sick on your watch. But on the other side, you have the social and emotional wellness of all of our youth. The phone calls that I've taken from parents since March of kids who aren't coming out of their bedrooms because they're so depressed, not being able to be with their friends, not being able to play sports. Parents calling over concern of what's happening online with their children when they have to work. So there's risk on both sides, but I'll say that I've had more phone calls on this side than I've had COVID cases on this side in our community. And we have to listen to that. There may come a time that changes and shifts, and then we'll have to pivot into a different direction, as we talked about. But the planning that we're doing as an administrative team and our leadership teams, we're preparing for that shift. So if we have to make that shift, it's going to be dynamically better than what you experienced and all of our teachers experienced when we had emergency remote learning, when we had no time to plan for it. So my opinion, yes, our kids need to be back in school. And by offering options, it creates a huge inequity. And our communities can't afford that. So I strongly feel that right now, today, at whatever time it is, based on the data we need to be in school. And if it shifts, this team will do the work that needs to happen to make that shift better than what it was last spring.
Thank you, Deb.
I just wanted to come up and echo so much of what Deb said. I had 2 teachers in the building today, and one of them broke down in tears when she saw me. We haven't seen each other since March. And she said it was so important to be able to come in and get back in her space and feel those kids and know what she had to do. And by the end of the day, she has 58 individual art packets all ready to go in Ziploc bags. She's figured out where she's got to put things, doing a dry run of how she's going to speak to the kids about moving around the room and staying in certain places. The teachers can't wait to come back. I have kids who do drive-bys in the cars to show me the new masks they have. I have parents asking, how do I get my child used to wearing a mask for 30 minutes? We're getting so many phone calls about how can we help support you to get these kids back 5 days and what can we do? It has been phenomenal. I've never felt like the community's ever been tighter. I've never had more positive communication with so many extended family members. And it is what Deb said. Safety is critical. None of us want to have anyone get sick, ever. And we worry about that all the time. But the same thing, fielding the phone calls from the spring of kids just losing track of them, not coming out, not talking to their parents, feeling detached from their friends. Just knowing that we can get them back. I had another teacher in today who's devised so many outdoor learning opportunities now. And knowing that we're saying, yes, go outside, think of ways you can explore your surroundings and bring that into the math and bring that into the science and the reading. So we're even seeing education in our own buildings change completely right now. And in a way, it's such a great gift we're being given to be able to do that. I have teachers who are practicing right now how to make their eyes say what the kids can't see their mouth do. How do you make your eyes really excited for a student? How do you walk around the room when you have a mask on to make sure students can hear you? How are you going to work with students so that you can hear them without anyone missing a beat in the room? And in 23 years of teaching, and now my 3rd year going in as an administrator, I don't ever think I've seen teachers so excited and invested and encouraged. They are anxious, but they're seeking out so many ways to try to engage the kids and do the best of their craft that they possibly can. So I am all for 5 days. I'm so excited for it. I know my community members need this, and I think we're going to make it work the very best that we can.
Can I say one more thing? As probably one of the few people in the community that's had COVID, I can tell you it sucks. I'm still dealing with the after effects, the COVID fog on your brain, the feeling like the connections do not make each other in your brain anymore, that the words that I'm thinking in my brain cannot make it out of my mouth. It's a very scary disease, very scary virus, and I just don't want anyone else to have to feel this the way that I have felt since March. That is my primary concern. I don't want my family to feel it. I don't want the kids to feel it. I don't want their families to feel it, and I don't want our teachers to feel it. And if I have to continue to fight, I will. I will make the best decisions for my family. I agree that my children need to be in school. They need that social piece. Because I do have the kids that are in their rooms and they will not come out. And I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, because this has been very emotional for me. It's very hard to make the best decisions in these situations. I have been doing so much research and trying to figure out what is the best option, and I just wish that we had the options for those families that could commit to doing what they felt was best for that particular family. And I don't feel like we're giving it to them back. And that's all I'm gonna say on it.
Thank you for sharing, Angie. Is there anyone else, administrators, who'd like to speak?
Yeah, I got a couple of things.
Okay, we've got Phil Hall, principal of high school, strutting up.
I do struggle a little bit, excuse me. I want to say a couple things, I'll try to keep it pretty short. But number one, I think it's important that we talk about the fact that everything we're doing within this district is within the guidance we received from the state. I think it's important to understand what went into the creation of that guidance, and that guidance comes from medical professionals and scientists and folks who have done a lot of research. And they gave us a plan for how to reopen our schools safely, and everything that we're doing is within that guidance. So I think that's important to consider. Another thing I think is important to consider is that we are going to extreme measures to follow that guidance. I'm going to have a teacher present on Wednesday to the Fairhaven Union High School Task Force a map and a schedule for high schoolers to use the bathroom. And that's one example of about 300 I could throw out there of things we are doing that are completely extraordinary for the safety of our students. So I hope we're not seeing the lack of a remote option as a lack of effort, because it's not. That would be completely unfair. The third thing I want to bring up is every single student, in my opinion, at this high school, every single student that's granted that medical exemption and is allowed to participate or access their education remotely all the time, that is going to require sacrifice of our teacher, every kid. And that's a conversation we were having when we decided not to make that a widespread option. That was mentioned before, but I just want to make sure that's clear. We would be putting all of our students in a situation where their educational, the quality of their education, we'll put it that way, would almost certainly decline if we were to offer this to everyone. And so just understand these decisions are coming from a place of really caring about the quality of education we're providing. I think the difficulty of this decision is evidenced by some local school districts that are not opening at all, because they saw that trying to offer both of these things at one time is really, really tough and has a negative impact on the experience and the education of the kids. So I'm thrilled that our primary schools are able to offer 5 days a week. I'm thrilled we're able to offer every other day. Thank you.
Can I just make one more comment to that? So one of your statements, though, was that we're doing everything by the state guidance, but our mere presence here isn't contrary to the state guidance, correct? So I think when we introduce doubt, it's very hard for parents to say, I 100% trust you, when this right here, meeting in person, is contrary to that. It's difficult. And I don't not understand why it's important for a contactual meeting. I get that interaction and being able to share that. There's a tone that you get when you can actually see all of the body action for, you know, the rest of communication that's nonverbal. But it's really hard to send a message, and I get exactly what Phil was trying to say in terms of we're doing all of these things, but the minute you introduce any doubt, it's going to be huge on any parent's mind. Because the stakes are high, and Angela pointed it out.
Is there anybody online, board member or employee, Patrick or other, who would like to share a perspective?
Yeah, this is Tanya, I can jump back in. I just wonder if there's not another solution if we look, the folks in the school have a much more family by family view. I know there are some classrooms where the 6 feet will be more challenging than other classrooms. And I just wonder if there couldn't be a solution where that matches up with families that are looking for another option. And also if the remote education or the support to families could be something less than maybe you thought about before, like if it could be a weekly email, like here's what's going on to families that are doing emergency COVID homeschooling or whatever you want to call it. Just something, I feel like if it were one email a week that here's what's happening in school, it would make it easier for families to come back and stay feeling connected to the school and not a huge commitment possibly for staff. So there's some things that could be done that are smaller than taking full staff off and reducing the quality of in-person education. So I think the in-person piece, I think we can agree is crucial for some of the families. But if there's not a way that we can have the people who want the option actually benefit the schools, because there'll be more room in the classrooms and there's possibly creative ways to make it beneficial on both sides. I don't want to miss those opportunities. They might be out there. They might not match up, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking about too.
All right, thank you, Tanya. I guess we'll move forward.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Patrick's not saying anything about Orwell. So a couple parents and me have gotten together, some of the teachers, we're going to create some outdoor spaces for kids to teachers to be able to take their kids to go teach. So in the woods where there's shade, we're going to clear it out a little bit. And we're working on things like that. I just wanted to put that out there.
All right, thank you, Peter. And just to wrap this up, I guess, for now, we'll certainly talk about it most every board meeting. Thank you, board members, for coming and sharing your emotion and your feelings. And the same applies for administrators who spoke up tonight and sharing their perspectives as well. And again, thank you for Brooke being a leader and all her team, administrators, principals, and especially, as Deb mentioned, the teachers at home who are putting in incredible amount of time this summer planning for what the school year will look like. Thank you, everyone. Calendar.
So yes, in your packet is the new calendar that would need to be approved tonight. We needed to redo the calendar when the governor pushed the start date for students back to September 8th. That required us to redo the calendar again.
You looking for a motion?
Make a motion for the updated calendar to be approved. Peter Stone.
Second, Julie Finnegan.
Is there any questions or discussion about the updated calendar? Like the weather in Vermont, just wait a week and it'll change, right?
Yeah, that could change again. I was going to say, I wish there was conversation about the February-April break thing. Well, I think it would be the prime opportunity to ditch one of those bad boys and get out of school.
Well, that's all around Stafford.
I know. So Stafford, ditch one of those and get out a week early.
But seriously, that subject's come up
I know.
for
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
years I've been on
I know.
different schools.
It's like same old, same old.
How do we really approach that and
Right.
take care of that situation?
But especially
Yeah.
with what's going on,
Yep.
if we can keep the kids in school instead of people traveling,
Yep.
that's the best thing for keeping our numbers in check and keeping people safe. And I don't know if there's any way of lobbying, but those suckers, they should both disappear. And we get out earlier in the year before it starts to warm up, at least for this year under COVID, because from a safety standpoint, that's the best thing we can do is keep as many people
Yep.
grounded here as we can.
I mean, I can certainly bring it up with the regional group. I mean, the other piece that may happen is the legislature may consider forgiving 5 student days, but the legislature doesn't come back into session until later this month, so we're not gonna know that, right? So
Well, that
I'm
was
sure
We're already at 177, that meets the criteria, right?
But they want to, there's talk of reducing the required amount of student days to 170 this year for the state of Vermont. We can certainly have more days. It's just that's the discussion, and that was also part of the reasoning of pushing the start date back, so you could have more in-service days before school started. However, if the legislature doesn't change the 175-day requirement, and you have your teachers work all these days before school starts, then you're in a pickle at the end of the year because you won't have staff to complete the remaining school days based on your master agreement. So it just doesn't work. The legislature needed to make that decision prior to recessing.
So I agree with John, though. Can you please bring that up to Stafford and just ask them? And I mean, it's a Rutland County thing, right? We could do whatever, well, if Stafford made some decision, it just affects Rutland County,
Well,
right?
it's the superintendents. The superintendents group makes the decision. We work on, but it's called the Stafford Calendar that gets submitted to the state of Vermont.
Okay.
But we make
But
the
we
decision
can, as Rutland
regionally.
County, regionally, decide
Correct,
not to have
if
one.
we can get the other districts to agree to
Right,
that.
right. But I'm just saying, what we do does not affect the rest of the counties in the state of Vermont.
Correct.
So we do have a little leeway there, that is just.
Right.
All right, any further discussion on the updated calendar? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the calendar, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay. Meal prices, is there an introduction to that from you or Cheryl, or?
I would defer to Cheryl on that.
I sent out a memo that everybody should have gotten that I think pretty well explains the meal pricing. I know we have provision 2, but we still have to set meal prices. So I didn't know if there were any questions.
So we should have gotten an attachment with the proposed prices, and Cheryl has drawn it out with an action item.
Yep.
So if someone could make that motion, and then we can address any questions that might come up.
All right, I make the motion to set the meal prices for the 2021 school year based on the recommendations of the Director of Finance as follows, and she will give those to you. Should I say them? So people know. All right, student breakfast, K through 8, $1.70. Student breakfast, high school, $1.95. Student lunch, $3. Adult breakfast, $2.85. Adult lunch, $4.10. Milk, 60 cents. And this is a 10-cent increase from last year for all items.
Correct.
Second, Peter Stone.
Is there any discussion about the proposed meal prices?
Tim, I got a question. Now, this is all contracted, right?
Yes.
Or, so we have to set a meal price above what they contracted to supply those meals for?
No, this is the price that, if we weren't doing provision 2, families would pay for meals. In theory, it's the price for second meals. If we were in a situation where students could purchase second meals, these would be the prices that they would pay. And these are the prices for adult meals. And so, as I explained, there's a federal calculator that tells you how much you can increase lunch prices anyway. And so that is 10 cents. And so everything increasing 10 cents is how I looked at it.
Setting a price has no impact on like revenue sources or break-even type?
Well, I mean, it does. I mean, it has an impact only on things that don't involve student breakfast and student lunch, student first breakfast and student first lunch. So any other revenue, if we were not dealing with the situation which we have, which is dealing with serving meals in classrooms, and students had an opportunity to get a second meal, that is revenue. If we were serving a la carte, again, that is also revenue. And we're not even We don't set the prices for à la carte.
I just didn't know if raising the prices now gives the Abbey Group greater flexibility to manage their costs or whatnot. It gives them like a target.
No, I mean, it benefits the district. I think, the idea is to try to make sure the meals are appropriately priced as best we can. You can see that, I think I pointed it out, that federally, it came in at $3.09. And so we're still almost 10 cents below that. So at $3, because you can only increase so much per year.
Okay. Any other questions about meal prices? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the meal prices as stated in the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to warrants. And there was a printout, there's 3 motions that we need for warrants, food service grants and regular.
So I would make a motion that we pay invoices in the amount of $2,197,660.11. Oh, excuse me, different number. I make a motion we pay the invoices in the total amount of $2,594,892.89.
Second, Peter Stone.
Any discussions or questions on the first round of warrants?
I have 3 questions. The first one actually has to do with Green Mountain Power, and there was a check amount, and it could just be the way I'm interpreting these, but it says Orwell Hall, $5,315.30 for the period of 6/9 to 7/9 of 2020. That seems like an awful big power bill when we weren't using it.
It's probably the school. That can't be the town.
But I mean,
I'd have to pull out the bill, it's in this box.
Okay.
If you give me your specific items, I just don't know them off the top of my head. So I'm always happy to answer them. If I have them in advance, I can answer them.
okay, I just was looking at this when, just before I came, so I
Sure, you
didn't.
can pull it out.
Yeah. The other one was in June for lawn mowing in Orwell, $8,870.50. Is that a 1-year price, or is that I haven't mowed my lawn in 8 weeks because it's been crispy brown, so that seems a little excessive.
Maybe they were watering.
That's a good 1 year.
I think that.
Okay. And then the other had to do with a check in July to Black River Design for $14,295.
Yeah, that was engineering work for the school nurse offices.
Okay. And then lastly was VHI, an insurance premium, $566,583.
Yep.
Is that for the year, or is that a half a year, or?
No, that's probably
Hopefully that's not for
a
1 month.
That's 1 month.
Okay.
That's why, as we've shown, benefits on that chart, nearly, what is it, 25% of your budget?
Yeah, so I mean,
That's the monthly premium for health
that's $6 million a year
Yep.
for health insurance.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Some people earn as much as
Your
as much as their benefit.
Salary.
All right.
Their salary is as much as, nearly as much as their benefit.
That's all I got.
I can pull those out for you.
Okay.
Except the one in the box.
All right, Ms. Glenn, anybody else have questions about that first motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, 2.594 million, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, Glenn?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion, pay the food service account in the amount of $35,973.29.
Second, Julie Finnegan.
Any discussion on the food service component? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Glenn?
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the grants in the amount of $25,524.85.
Second, Peter Stone.
Any discussion on the grants, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, we talked about slipping substitutes in here.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So, I emailed you a memo today around substitute pay. Currently, we pay substitutes $100 per day. We will have a shortened school day next year. We also have moved to electronic timesheets throughout the district. So we are proposing, after looking at what other districts are doing around us, that we set the pay at an hourly rate of $15 per hour with a 3-hour minimum, because we're obviously not going to get somebody to come for 1 hour. So that's what we're proposing.
Make a motion to accept the $15 an hour sub pay.
Second, Julie.
Any discussion on the substitute policy and pay?
So how does that break down? Question. For an average substitute to do a whole day would be what? What's the?
Well, if it's, 6.5 hours, it'll be like $90 to $100. It'll be close to what we were paying before.
So if at a daily rate of $100 for 6 hours a day, it's $16.66 an hour. So, our hours per day is decreasing, so it makes sense to reevaluate what we're paying for a day. In conjunction with that, we're also moving to electronic timesheets, and it really works best if everybody is on an hourly basis as opposed to some other unit of pay.
How's our status of getting subs?
So far, principals have reached out to substitutes. So far, we have subs lined up for September. We do have some folks that have declined to sub in the schools for this year. So, we'll have to see. But so far, we do have some, so.
I just get concerned because I'm dropping pay for them, anyone who might be subbing. And I would much rather have them at least get the 100.
Well, no, it's really not a drop in
It's actually going to be
pay.
more when they go back to the regular.
It's because of our, if we had not reduced the number of hours for a school day, this is actually an increase in pay.
They'd be making $112.50 a
Right.
day if they did a regular school.
But I also think you have to keep in mind the starting rate for our instructional assistants and custodians. If you went much higher than this rate, you'd be paying our substitutes more than our instructional assistants and custodians, which I don't believe we should be doing.
So I guess my question is then, if a sub only comes in for a half a day, they don't get paid the $100 a day, they get paid an hourly rate?
$15 an hour. So
But I
they'd
mean
be there for at
previously.
least-
Correct. They would
Correct.
get half.
Previously, so it was an
Previously.
hourly rate previously.
Previously, no. Previously, if they came in for a half a day, they'd get $50.
Okay.
100, yeah. But that half a day would be longer than what the half a day is going to be this year. The instructional day is shortened.
Yep, okay.
And this is still Sherry Nichols calling, we're not using any
No,
third-party
we
providers?
we don't use third party, we use the frontline system, so an email goes out to our substitutes.
We have an electronic, so Frontline, it's an electronic system. It's actually the same system that Kelly Services uses to run their program. And it tracks absences for employees. So when an employee puts in their absence, it goes into the system and substitutes that wish to sub on particular days, then fill those absences. So it's a lot of it is electronic. It's not all electronic. Some of it, sometimes in the schools, if the absence comes in late, or there aren't substitutes available, the school has to scramble to try to deal with that absence. But Sherry does manage that system for us.
It worked good, I use it. I was worried when I first went to it.
Yeah, it has a mobile app.
You get an app, you go to it, it tells you who's looking for a sub, and you can sign up if you want, you can block days you don't want a sub. It works good, you get emails sometimes, the teacher can send you one saying they're gonna sub, and you look at it.
So our electronic timesheets are actually the same platform as the absence management. So it will all integrate. So when an employee has an absence that's paid hourly, that will feed into their timesheet. It's similar platforms, so staff are used to it. So we're trying to integrate some of those peripheral systems outside our accounting software.
Thank you. Any other questions about the substitute policy? Is that where you're at? Yes. Yes, substitute policy. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the increase, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, other business. I guess I'll just start by saying we haven't mentioned the fact that we have a school budget vote tomorrow. That's important.
Well, I'm hoping everybody got the robocall.
I got the robocall?
I got the robocall. No.
Well, yeah, you want it because it's like, yeah. You want it.
Or-
You don't want it.
No.
I'll send it to you.
So the business being, to those in the public who are listening, if you haven't voted yet, absentee, please go to the polls tomorrow. Tuesday, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Tomorrow, Tuesday,
Yep.
and vote in person. Certainly need your support. Anybody else have anything to say about the school budget?
Well, and even if you did vote early, if you can't, they'll let you vote again.
Vote a second time.
Do it early enough and.
So yes, please vote, and we appreciate your support. I was curious about sports. I mean, I know Mr. Scott mentioned that fall sports will happen, and there's some guidance supposedly forthcoming this week, but again, things tend to be delayed.
It's been coming for 3 weeks.
Obviously, it might be too early to have any ideas or plans, but...
Right, I'm meeting, I have a meeting with athletic directors and principals on Wednesday. I'm hoping that the guidance typically comes out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I'm hoping maybe it'll be out tomorrow. But there will be some type of sports.
Now, that decision is going to be for 7 through 12?
Yes.
Okay, so we have more control over 5 and 6, the non-affiliated
Yeah, I
grades?
mean, I think we are going to have to make some decisions definitely about middle schools, especially because right now we're combining a lot of our sports and then we're mixing cohorts. So I think that'll be a part of the conversation with the principals and athletic directors on Wednesday of how we're going to handle that exactly. I think the high school is contained here, but it's the middle school, we would be mixing all of our schools. So that's going to be, it's definitely going to be trickier.
The risk of starting something, people are going to hate people. Do we have to do sports? if we decide not to, as a board?
No, you don't have to. So I think I think we need to see the guidance though.
Oh, yeah, I'm not-
And I
just
think
asking
then we
a
go
question.
from there and put everything out on the table as to, you know, what it might look like or what it can look like. I mean, I do think it's important for kids to have some extracurricular. I mean, having one of my sons who has not been involved in anything, I mean, it's really tough,
I mean,
so.
there are sports going on right now.
Right,
There are kids out
correct.
there doing baseball,
Correct.
soccer and stuff.
So if we can figure out how to do it in a safe way, you know, I think that might be important, so. But again, until I see it, the guidance.
Is there any other business that anyone needs to bring up or we're overlooking, Brooke?
Nope.
Do we need an executive session?
For personnel, please, with just me.
Now, can we like finish up like this, we have to finish up this meeting first and then like be done with it and then go to the executive session meeting? Is that correct?
Well, online.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do the, well,
We're not gonna come back.
you're not gonna take any action. So, I mean, basically you have to come back and adjourn.
So can we adjourn now and then do the executive
No.
session thing?
Not technically, no.
Okay. So,
We,
I guess I need some help on the logistics here.
You have a quorum of the board here though, so you could, this
Let people out.
board members here could adjourn the meeting after,
afterwards.
Okay.
if you wanted.
So someone's gonna make a motion to go into executive for personnel, and then all these sessions need to be logged out,
Correct.
here in person and remote.
Yes,
But the board members have a link they can come back on.
but the people,
Yes.
yeah, I emailed all the board members a link for executive session today. So the folks that are participating remotely for board members can log
Okay.
on.
And then once that meeting is done, we're then gonna come back in person to the regular meeting and adjourn.
Well, you have a quorum of the board. If you're not gonna take any action,
Okay.
you could just, and I don't believe you're gonna take any action, so you could just adjourn.
All right, so just quickly, agenda building, to be determined,
I think to be determined largely by guidance that comes out from the Agency of Education and the vote tomorrow, so I think that would take us in either we're beginning to plan for the FY22 budget or we're talking about the FY21 budget all over again.
and do you anticipate a finance committee meeting later this week if we have a negative result tomorrow?
Correct.
Okay, everyone clear? So we're gonna look for a motion to go into executive session for personnel.
I'll make that a motion to go into executive session for personnel. Peter Stone.
Second, Julie Finnegan.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed? Okay, we'll just take a few minutes here for a break and to power down and to go into an executive session.